The Peak District was designated Britain's first national park in 1951. 29 years later, it was ablaze.
Clouds of white smoke hang over the moorland as grass, heather and peat burn away. Dozens of fires now have a firm hold along a stretch 30 miles long. Cigarette ends are the most likely cause. 5,500 acres have already been destroyed in the Peak Park.
That fire eventually burned out, but over 300 more followed and the park has not recovered. And that's a concern to us all.
Because these peat uplands are not just important for wildlife,
but they're crucial to the catchment of water and the absorption of carbon emissions. Chris Dean, Programme Manager of the Moors for the Future Partnership, explained why the Peak hasn't recovered naturally.
When the textile revolution was going on, when the steelworks were going in Sheffield, there was massive amounts of industrial pollution coming out of the atmosphere into this area. And the effect of that is that massive amounts of acid rain falling in these moorlands, carrying with it high levels of lead and other heavy metals as well. And it's acidified the ground to the extent where it's one of the rare places in the country where we've got metal-eating bacteria. And that is one of the issues. The other issue is that we've had summer fires, and once the summer fire strips off the vegetation, the acidic nature of the soil underneath means that it's almost impossible for anything to germinate in it. So we've lost a lot of our interesting plant species because of that, and that has a knock-on effect to the invertebrates which some of the bird species survive on as well.
Moors for the Future brings together a whole range of public and business partners like the National Trust and Yorkshire Water. It was established in 2003 to restore the moor, but the damage is so vast they've used helicopters to make over 10,000 flights to sow millions of seeds over 700 acres of severely eroded moorland.
one of the key restoration areas is right here underneath the giant Home Moss radio transmitter.
But this terrain is too tricky to sow from helicopter, so here it's painstakingly done by hand. The Environment Agency is another partner in the scheme, and Mark Haslam helps out with volunteers on the ground.
So what exactly are they doing here?
At the moment they're spreading out this heather brash onto the bare peat to try and get heather to regenerate on top of it and stop it eroding.
And this isn't just about the appearance of the moor, is it?
When these moorlands are in a healthy condition and growing, they're actually producing peat. They're locking away carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. Once they get eroded, that's then reducing carbon dioxide back to the atmosphere. So that's contributing to climate change at this point. And if we can restore these moors to the point where they start forming peat again, it'll actually be helping to combat climate change.
So the peat here is actually acting as a huge carbon sink?
It is, yeah. There are millions of tonnes of peat and carbon locked up in these moorlands. It's a couple of metres deep, and where it's been badly eroded, it's almost completely gone in places.
It's estimated the peat is currently releasing the same annual carbon emissions as a town of 50,000. It takes centuries for peat to form, but just a few decades for the wind and rain to strip it away. If it gets back to bedrock, it's gone for good. Cotton grass and sphagnum moss are key peat building plants, but this 15-foot square patch is all the sphagnum left in the national park. But there is hope, as a laboratory is propagating moss to reintroduce to restored areas, and its capacity to hold water is vital to rainwater control.
The thing about all this bare peat is when you get a thunderstorm or a big storm event, the water just runs straight off, and that can cause problems further down in terms of flooding. So what we're trying to do is to use these moorlands as a buffer to make sure that these moors absorb as much water as possible and release it more slowly to take the peak out of storm events.
And how long is this process going to take? Is it endless?
It's not instant. It is going to take a few years, but there's significant progress been made so far.
It's taken an immense effort to turn the fate of this wilderness around.
It's already cost £2 million and may need another 10 million more, but the signs are good.
When you think of the future of our water, our wildlife and our atmosphere, it's got to be worth it.